central nervous system. The nervous system is classified into: the central nervous system is formed by the brain and spinal cord. 2. Peripheral nervous system, which includes 1. Cranial nerves, 2. Spinal nerves, 3. Autonomic nervous system. The brain is the part of central nervous system which lies within the cranial cavity. Cerebrum, made of 2 cerebral hemispheres. 2. Cerebellum. 3. Midbrain. 4. Pons. 5. Medulla oblongata cerebrum, it is the largest part of the brain. Parts: cerebrum consists of 2 hemispheres, namely the right and left hemispheres. These 2 hemispheres are separated by 1. Falx cerebri, a fold of dura mater in the midline. 2. Corpus callosum, a bridge of white matter, below. Lobes: each cerebral hemisphere has 4 lobes, they are: frontal lobe. 2. Temporal lobe. 3. Parietal lobe. 4. Occipital lobe fissures. The surface of the hemispheres have some fissures. The 4 important fissures are: 1. Central sulcus. 2. Parieto-occipital sulcus. 3. Callosomarginal fissure. 4. Sylvian fissure. Gray matter, it consists of nerve cells that constitute the surface of the hemispheres. It is also called as cerebral cortex. It contains a number of folds or convolutions. These convolutions are separated by fissures. White matter, it is present in the interior of the hemispheres. It contains nerve fibers. Functions of cerebrum: motor functions like control of voluntary movements. 2. Sensory functions, which include: 1. Analysis of touch, temperature, pain, pressure, shape, etc. 2. Governing of conditional reflexes. 3. Control of intelligence, speech, memory, etc. through higher centers of the cerebrum. These functions are governed by 2 parts of the cerebral cortex, namely the motor cortex and sensory cortex. Thalamus. Thalamus is situated at the base of the cerebrum. It consists of 2 ovoid masses separated by the 3rd ventricle. Thalamus is an important relay station for the incoming fibers of spinal cord and brain stem on their way to cerebral cortex. Hypothalamus, it is present below the thalamus. It forms the floor and part of the lateral walls of the 3rd ventricle. 1. Synthesis of oxytocin and vasopressin, the 2 posterior pituitary hormones. 2. Production of releasing factors, like GH releasing factor, FSH releasing factor and LH releasing factor. 3. Regulation of body temperature. 4. Coordination of autonomic nervous system. 5. Control of appetite. Cerebellum, it lies below the cerebrum. It is situated in the posterior cranial fossa behind the pons and medulla. Cerebellum consists of 2 hemispheres. An outer gray matter which has numerous convolutions. 2. An inner white matter. Functions of cerebellum: coordination of muscular movements. 2. To keep the muscles in a normal state of tension. 3. Maintenance of balance and equilibrium. Midbrain, it is a short constricted segment of brain which forms a connection between cerebrum and other parts of brain. It contains: 1. Cerebral peduncles, which are 2 thick bundles present ventrally. They are separated by a deep depression. 2. Cerebral aqueduct, a narrow canal which passes through the center of midbrain. This canal connects the cavity of 3rd and 4th ventricle. 3. Superior colliculi, which are a pair of rounded bodies present at the root of aqueduct. They are the reflex centers for hearing. 4. Inferior colliculi, which is an inferior pair, are also present at the root of the aqueduct. They contain the reflex centers for hearing. 5. Nuclei of 3rd and 4th cranial nerves are present in the midbrain. Pons, it lies under the cerebellum. It contains both gray matter and white matter. It forms a bridge between the 2 lobes of cerebellum. Nerve fibers pass through pons to midbrain above and medulla oblongata below. Medulla oblongata, it is the part of brain which forms the upward continuation of spinal cord. It lies on the base of skull just in front of foramen magnum. The medulla oblongata contains 2 ridges on the ventral surface called pyramids. The pyramids are formed by a number of nerve fibers which descend from cerebral hemispheres into the spinal cord. Spinal cord position. Spinal cord is a part of central nervous system which is present in the vertebral canal. The upper end of spinal cord commences at the level of foramen magnum. This upper end is continuous above with medulla oblongata. The lower end lies at the level of first lumbar vertebra. The longest of these nerves is called as filum terminale, which ends at the coccyx. Enlargement. The spinal cord shows two enlargements in its course. They are cervical and lumbar enlargements. Structure. A cross-section of the spinal cord shows the following structures. 1. White matter on the surface and gray matter in the interior, reverse of what is seen in the brain. 2. The gray matter is H-shaped. It divides the white matter into anterior, posterior and lateral columns. 3. Anterior fissure separates the anterior columns of each side. 4. The H-shaped gray matter contains anterior and posterior horns. 5. The anterior horn cells are concerned with motor functions. Anterior root of spinal nerves arise from the anterior horn. 6. The posterior horn cells are sensory in function. The posterior root of spinal nerves enter the spinal cord through the posterior horns. 7. The posterior root contains a ganglion called as dorsal ganglion. 8. A minute canal is present in the center of spinal cord. It is called as central canal. It contains cerebrospinal fluid and it is continuous above with the fourth ventricle. The meninges. The brain and spinal cord are protected by three coverings called meninges. They are 1. Dura mater, which forms the outer layer. 2. Arachnoid, which forms the middle layer. 3. Pia mater, which forms the inner layer. 1. Dura mater, it is the outermost fibrous membrane. It lines the interior of the skull. It contains two folds which project into cranial cavity. They are 1. Falx cerebri, which lies in the midline. It separates the right and left cerebral hemispheres. 2. Tentorium cerebelli, which lies horizontally. It separates the cerebrum and cerebellum. 2. Arachnoid mater, it is a thin, transparent membrane. It lies between dura mater and pia mater. 3. Pia mater, it is the innermost layer. It closely covers the brain and spinal cord. Ventricles of brain. They are cavities in the brain which are filled with cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. The ventricles are 4 in number. 1. The right and left lateral ventricles, which lie one in each cerebral hemisphere. 2. The third ventricle, which is present in the midline. The third ventricle communicates with the two lateral ventricles and also with the fourth ventricle. 3. The fourth ventricle lies in front of cerebellum and behind pons and medulla oblongata. It is continuous below with the central canal of spinal cord. Cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, it is a clear, colorless alkaline fluid present in 1 subarachnoid space, 2 ventricles of brain, 3 central canal of spinal cord. Secretion of CSF. CSF is secreted by a network of blood vessels called choroid plexus. This plexus is situated in the lateral ventricles. Composition of CSF. CSF contains water, glucose, proteins, nitrogenous substances, electrolytes, like sodium, potassium and calcium chlorides, and a few cells, mostly lymphocytes. Functions of CSF. 1. It protects the brain and spinal cord from shock. 2. It conveys nutrients to the brain and spinal cord. 3. It removes the waste products of brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system. Cranial nerves. There are 12 pairs of nerves attached to the brain. 1. Sensory, carrying impulses to the brain. 2. Motor, carrying impulses from the brain to the periphery. 3. Mixed, containing both sensory and motor fibers. The following are the 12 pairs of cranial nerves. First, olfactory nerve, sensory, nerve of smell. Second, optic nerve, sensory, nerve of vision. Third, oculomotor nerve, motor, supplies the muscles of eyeball. Fourth, trochlear nerve, motor, supplies the muscles of eyeball. Fifth, trigeminal nerve, mixed, sensory fibers to face and forehead. Motor fibers to muscles of musdiction. 6th abducens nerve, motor, it supplies the of eyeball. Muscle 7th facial nerve, motor, it supplies the muscles of expression. 8th auditory nerve, sensory, it consists of 2 parts, 1 cochlear nerve, the nerve of hearing. 2 vestibular nerve, the nerve of equilibrium and balance. 9th glossopharyngeal nerve, mixed, sensory to tongue and motor to the pharyngeal muscles. 10th vagus nerve, mixed, it is distributed to pharynx, larynx, lungs, heart, stomach and intestine. 11th accessory nerve, motor, it divides into 2 parts. 1 part joins the vagus and supplies pharynx and larynx, the other part supplies the sternomastoid and trapezius muscles of the neck. 12th hypoglossal nerve, motor, it supplies the muscles of the tongue. Spinal nerves, there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves that arise from the spinal cord. Nerve plexuses, at certain regions of the spinal cord, some individual nerve trunks unite to form plexuses. 1 cervical plexus, it is formed by the first 4 cervical nerves. 2 brachial plexus, it is formed by the lower 4 cervical nerves and the first thoracic nerve. The importance of brachial plexus are: 1 circumflex nerve, 2 musculocutaneous nerve, 3 radial nerve, 4 ulnar nerve, 5 median nerve, 3 lumbar plexus, it is formed by the first 4 lumbar nerves. Its main branches are femoral nerve and obturator nerve. 4 sacral plexus, it is formed by the 4th and 5th lumbar nerves and the 5 sacral nerves. Sensation and sensory path. Sensations can be classified into 2 types. 1. Special sensation that can be felt by specialized organs, for example sensation of smell, taste, sight, hearing, etc. 2. General sensation which can be felt by all parts of the body. General sensations can again be classified into 2 types. 1. Superficial sensations, like pain, touch and temperature, which are felt by the skin. 2. Deep sensations, like pain, touch and deep pain, felt by muscles, joints and other organs. Sensory organs, the organs which receive the sensory stimuli, can be classified into 1. Exteroceptive organs, which receive sensations produced by stimuli which occur outside the body, for example smell, taste, sight and temperature. 2. Interoceptive organs, which receive sensations produced from stimuli inside the body. The interoceptive organs are further classified into 1. Enteroceptive organs, which receive stimuli from visceral organs, for example thirst and hunger. 2. Proprioceptive organs, which receive stimuli from muscles and joints. Sensory path. The following is the path of sensory impulses. 1. The peripheral nerves carry superficial sensations, from skin, and deep sensations, from muscles and joint, towards the spinal cord. 2. These sensory fibers enter the posterior horn of gray matter of spinal cord through posterior nerve root. 3. Then the fibers of deep and superficial sensation travel by different paths as follows. 1. Fibers carrying superficial sensation travel upwards in the anterior column of spinal cord. 2. Fibers carrying deep sensations travel upwards in the posterior column of spinal cord. 4. Both these fibers cross each other and go to the opposite side of spinal cord. This crossing occurs at the level of medulla oblongata. 5. The impulses are then conveyed to sensory areas of brain through brain stem, thalamus and white matter of brain. Motor path. The motor path for voluntary movements consists of 2 neurons. 1. The upper motor neuron. 2. The lower motor neuron. Upper motor neuron extends from the pyramidal cells of the motor cortex of the brain to the anterior horn cells cord of the spinal cord. 1. Impulses commence from the pyramidal cells of the motor cortex, situated in front of the central sulcus. 2. The fibers pass through the internal capsule and pons and reach the medulla oblongata. 3. These fibers cross each other in the medulla oblongata. Lower motor neuron extends from the anterior horn to the peripheral nerve supplying the muscle. 1. The fibers from anterior horn cells reach the anterior nerve root. 2. The fibers of the anterior nerve root unite with the incoming fibers of the posterior nerve root and form the spinal nerve. 3. The motor nerves emerging from the spinal nerve supply the muscle. Reflex action. Reflex action occurs independent of will and it is concerned with involuntary movements. It is a defense mechanism manifesting as a quick and automatic motor response to a sensory stimulus. Reflex arc. It consists of structures that are involved in the production of a reflex action. 1. A sensory organ like skin that receives the sensory stimulus. 2. A sensory nerve that arises from the sensory organ. Through a peripheral nerve, it terminates at the posterior nerve root of the spinal cord. 3. The spinal cord.